Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Psychcinct, Succinct Psychology. And today we're going to be wrapping up our Chapter 2 research methods of IO psychology from the Psychology Applied to Work 12th edition textbook. So last time we talked about sources of data, research methods. Well, finished with the primary research methods, but finished up the secondary research methods. And today we are going to finish sources of data and just keep going from there. So final sources of data: observation, which is observing something, looking at something, and collecting data from your observations. Example being, you want to examine employee work habits or like just, how often people check their phone while they're walking. So you could like sit on a park bench and just record how many times you see somebody take their phone out while you're observing. That's just collecting data through observation. Observation is rich with data in an environment where behavior being studied occurs. So like a better example of that would be you're observing how employees interact with each other in the workplace. So you go to the workplace and you observe how they interact with each other, and you gather your data from there. Observation is good for generating ideas for further testing. You could come up with, oh, well, let's see if this happens if we add this. You can build off the observations to generate further testing. And next we have interviews/focus groups. So focus groups are often asked to respond to a question through a facilitated discussion in which participants build on answers. So example of this, and I'm sure you've seen it in a TV show or a movie, but it'd be like a company getting a random group of people, bringing them in and presenting them with a new advertisement, whether that be like a poster, billboard, commercial, and leading them through a discussion, like, oh, well, how did this make you feel? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And the group can build off the discussion by interacting with each other. So that's a focus group for you. And then you have your interviews, which are, just like, I'm sure you guys know what an interview is, but it's when you sit down with whoever you're trying to gather data on or whatever group you're trying to gather data on, and or an example of the group, and you just ask them a series of questions, record your data, just go from there. Pretty simple with that. Interviews and focus groups are frequently used with qualitative research, and those are the final two sources of data. So, organizational neuroscience is the study of neural activity as evidenced in organizational attitudes and behavior. It's also known as social cognitive neuroscience. Study of organizational attitudes, kind of like I just said, at the physiological level as well. So example of techniques for studying, attitudes and behavior at that physiological level are structural magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, for identifying brain structure. You have the functional magnetic resonance imaging for brain activity, and then you have, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, so I really apologize if I do, electroencephalography. I think that's how you say it, or an EEG for a brain's electrical output. Now, problem with organizational neuroscience is it's really expensive. For example, the cost of just one MRI machine is like $1 million or around there, and each brain scan costs $3,000. So that's obviously a lot of money, and it just makes it not very practical because it's just so much more expensive than other research methods. And it would be useful though if those resources like MRIs, fMRIs, EEGs were more accessible, because being able to have neurological assessment for higher level jobs, make sure like the brain structure is good, and like if you're, for a high level job like a brain surgeon or something, it'd be good to know that, or especially to know and eliminate candidates that could cause harm to others. So maybe they have something in their brain that makes them more violent. Maybe you're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have them in this job where it's very high intensity, high testosterone because they might freak out on somebody. So that's organizational neuroscience. Really expensive, but it would be really cool if we could access it more in IO psychology. So steps 3 and 4, measurement and analysis. So you have your measurement of your variables, quantitative versus categorical. I'm sure you guys have seen that in your basic psychology class if you've taken one. But quantitative variables are just numbers, quantity, numbers. And categorical is categories like gender, race, that kind of thing. And then you have your research variables, which are independent, which is a variable that can be manipulated to influence the values of a dependent variable. So throwing back to the previous video, in that Brooks et al. Study, the independent variable was the ritual because it was the variable that was being manipulated, and the dependent variable was the performance that they had on the singing task. So again, independent variable is just what's manipulating the dependent variable. The dependent variable is, what's being kind of measured, manipulated, not manipulated. Predictor is a variable used to predict or forecast a criterion variable, and it's primary object of a research study. So here we have a little chart. So the independent variable is leadership style. And the dependent variable is the employee performance because, the independent variable is what's being manipulated. So you can have the leader or boss or whatever have a really strict leadership style. And then the dependent variable is how the employee performance is affected by that, change in the leadership style. Or you can have independent variable be employee performance, and the dependent variable be employee trainability. So there's a measurement and analysis for you. Measurement and analysis continued. Sorry about that. We have the correlation coefficient, or R. It reflects degree of linear relationship, range from -1 to +1. Direction is either positive or negative, but that doesn't mean that, if you have a positive correlation, then it's good, and negative correlation is bad. It just means that if it's positive, it's closer to 1, and that means if it's on a graph, it's going up. Negative is closer to -1. If it's on a graph, it's going down. So positive up, negative down. And magnitude is the size. Size is index of strength of the relationship. So magnitude is, that's worded wrong. I'm sorry, I confused these. Determining causality. It cannot be inferred from correlation. Determining causality through non-experimental methods is highly controversial. So, correlation, I'm sure you've heard it before, is not equal causality. So if you find a correlation, like you're like, oh, well, more people buy soft drinks and drug use goes down, there's a correlation in that. That doesn't mean that there's a causation between that. Like, oh, people are buying more soda, which make them buy less drugs. Even if like I said, the correlation shows that, because correlation doesn't equal causation, there could be another factor manipulating that. So can't use, correlation doesn't equal causation. Long story short, sorry, that was long-winded. Step 5, conclusions from research. So boundary conditions for generalizability. So we have the representativeness of subjects, degree of fit between subjects and research task, research methods, so laboratory versus field study, and then there's the debate about university students as subjects. So, so what that means is conditions for generalizability is, how representative are the subjects that, of the population, and, how fit are the subjects for the research task, is it generalizable for the subjects, is it in the research method, is it in a laboratory, are you controlling these variables and stuff, or is it a field study? You're just going out in the field and conducting research. And there is, I don't know too much about this, but there is like a kind of debate about using university students as subjects. I have to read more about that. Sorry, I don't know more about that for you guys. Research is a cumulative process. Research is a craft. and the role of serendipity. Now, there are some ethical issues in research if you didn't know. So you have the APA Code of Ethics, you have the 5 rights of participants, informed consent, which means they are made aware of what the research is on, the process, all that stuff, privacy, so that they are aware that this is kind of private for them, confidentiality, protection from deception, so you can't be lied to. They can't be like, oh, we're gonna, do this, and then they do something else. And then a debriefing after the research, which just, explains the process, what was, done, basically, just letting you know. There are consequences for violating these rights during and after, and there's a complexity of real life ethical dilemmas. Research is not value free. So you do have to, you can't ignore ethics conducting research. There are guidelines for research that you have to follow. You have to make sure they're ethical, so like the Code of Ethics, 5 rights of participants, you need to follow those guidelines. There's no real ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, Faces of IO, we have Alexis A. Fink, PhD. She led talent analytics teams at Microsoft and Intel, led talent research projects at GE, NASA, BASF, and others. And here's a quote: advanced methods get a lot of attention, but through my career, I've discovered that often, this is bold, so it's important, that often the most useful conversation comes from sharing simple descriptive information or qualitative methods such as interviews, focus groups, or written comments. Advances in data visualization have made data storytelling much simpler, and applying good data visualization techniques can help convey key messages about patterns effectively and intuitively. Skill in gathering and analyzing qualitative information can help both inform quantitative study, design, and help leaders and decision makers understand the importance of trends in a way that a percent favorable rating can't. It's a nice quote from Alexis A. Fink there. It's a nice picture of her. But yeah, guys, that's going to be doing it for Chapter 2, Research Methods of IO Psychology. Appreciate you guys watching these videos, and I hope you found them, interesting, maybe a bit educational. And I hope to see you guys in the next chapter as we go through the Psychology Applied to Work 12th edition textbook. Again, my name is Prescott here at Psychcinct, Succinct Psychology, and I hope to see you guys next time. Thanks, bye-bye.